So we have a normal 3.5-inch hard drive. This one specifically has come from a NAS unit, network attached storage. Doesn't matter where they come from, they're all the same sort of drive effectively. So the first main component that we deal with is the PCB, or printed circuit board. This is the first interaction between power and the data being sent from the computer to the hard drive, and vice versa. So on here we have main components such as ROM chip, processor, motor chip, and the main connectors for the head stack and the motor. The main reason that we deal with these is because often we need the PCB to be unique to the drive. So if you feel the need to take it off and change it, which is your right, it's your hard drive, put the original one back on, because we need the information that's on this drive so that we can work with it effectively. Moving inside the drive, once you take all the security seals off, not that they make a great deal of difference. Again, opening a hard drive is all about having the right tools for the right job. If you leave all these little sticker things just lying around, they got a risk of getting into the hard drive and touching the surface, and we don't want to do that, or any other component inside the hard drive as well. So there's always stickers over the labels. That's the companies doing their bit to stop you opening them, but people open them anyway. So open this hard drive gently. So we are. So inside we will have the platters and the hard drive. There's also a very important part on the lid, the rubber gasket, which is why it was a bit more struggling to get off. That stops any crud from the outside world getting inside the drive. So if you don't remove this drive, this lid properly, and you fracture that, when you spin it up, it's going to start sucking loads of rubbish in and getting on this very nice pristine platter. In here, we have basically a very, very basic thing. We've got a motor, platters, heads, magnets, and the connector that goes through to the PCB on the other side. When taking down the hard drive apart, we need to use all the correct tools, otherwise you end up with an even more damaged hard drive. So when we take them apart, we want to touch nothing other than the bits that we want to touch. So the platters are extremely precise, they're extremely well machined, they're extremely well made up with lots of R&D over the years. We don't want to stick our fingers on them because it will just make the situation worse. And I'll show you why in a minute, because once you get your fingerprint on there, you'll never get your fingerprint off. And people say you can clean them, but to be honest, you're best off not cleaning them. Keep them as they were. So again, we can remove things quite easy. I've been doing it for almost 20 years, so it's quite second nature. There's also a little stopper. What this little stopper does, it stops the drive when spinning, the heads accidentally moving forward and going onto the platters. So now we have our heads removed. Again, being careful not to touch any of the components because they're very fragile. We have the heads. So they're perfectly fine. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4. They look exactly the same from the other side. There is a very fine cable running all the way down the arm to a preamp, which amplifies the signal that goes to the PCB to send to the computer with your precious data. So we'll put that to one side to discuss platters. The platters spin quite freely, 7,200 RPM. So just imagine if you decide to touch that and put a fingerprint on it and this thing is spinning at 7,000 RPM, when these very fragile heads hit it, boof, catastrophic failure effectively, okay? And it will just damage the surface. It's super, super shiny, it's super, super polished. The heads don't actually touch the platter when it's spinning at that speed. They actually float just above the surface, so they're very fragile indeed. Putting the drive back together, if you've gone as far as you want with taking the hard drive apart, you need to put them back in exactly the same order as you did before. Everything has its place, everything has the right screws, everything has the right order. If you don't do it properly, a lot more work is required to fix your drive. So we slide them on, put everything back in reverse order. So the stop is there now. So as you can see, my little tool here is stopping these heads moving onto the platter. I'm going a bit eccentric here. This drive isn't really important, but for display purposes only. And then the magnet, don't get caught out with the magnet. If you're going this far as well, it can be a little bit over the top. So again, practicing, knowing what you're doing helps. Put the screws back in where they're meant to come from. That way the drive will behave itself. Use the correct tools. If you don't keep these heads apart when using the correct tools, they'll stick together and break. And because they're highly sensitive, they won't work, and you'll need them replaced by professional people, aka me. Give it a little blow of dust, even though we're in a clean room, just to make sure. So now we seal the drive back up. This drive in particular has got little alignment notches, so you make sure that they're put back on so that the gasket is in the right place. Don't need to worry about torque settings. Hand tight, depends how tight your hands do things, but get every screw back in the right way. Whilst I'm following a pattern, that's just down to me keeping my personal life interesting. Right, so you screw that in, all the screws back together, making sure that that gasket is fully sealed to stop any contamination going in when we take it to the computer. Like so. And then put the PCB back on. And now that that's all done, we can put it back onto the extraction machine and see where we are with the drive and how healthy it is.